My pleasure another time to talk to Professor Rebecca Fernando, who will talk about a very interesting subject, developing clinically relevant diabetes health policy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hello again. Health policy seems to be a very nebulous entity. It's something which is done far away from the clinic or the bedside. But yet it affects everything that we do. It affects the way our patients think, it affects the way the general population thinks, and it affects the way people respond to the advice we give. So it would make sense if health policy makes sense at the bedside or in the clinic. In other words, it's clinically relevant. So let's see if we can do this. My experience on this is, firstly, I'm a clinician. I have an academic position in university, but I'm primarily a clinical doctor. But I've spent some time in the past training in public health as well as clinical epidemiology, and part of that has been very helpful to me in the last 4 years when I've been working with local government and government involved in health policy. So, first of all, if the policy is about diabetes, what is diabetes? If we had to reinvent a definition of diabetes, it would be a syndrome rather than a single disease. It would be a syndrome causing multiple complications, but influenced by a whole lot of things. Previous speakers have told us the importance of lipids, the importance of blood pressure, the role of obesity and other risk factors in affecting everything from the retina, the kidneys, right now to my previous speaker, the beta cell itself. So all these things can actually affect diabetes, in which case health policy must take this into account. So let's have a brief look at the natural history of diabetes before we move on. First of all, the diagnosis of diabetes does not necessarily mean the story begins there. Because in many countries, the onset of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, is anything between from 5 to 7 years before the diagnosis. That's the onset. The risks of microvascular disease clearly start from diagnosis, but the risks of macrovascular disease start even before that. And you can see that there are changes which take place in other surrogate markers like blood pressure, lipids and so on, which part of the metabolic syndrome start much earlier. So really, it's a spectrum of the same disease. So any policy which looks at diabetes should look at every part of this, not just the treatment part of it. So in order to do this, we're looking at the whole life story, the journey of the patient. It starts with a healthy patient population, exposure to risk factors, and there is that part of the disease when they first see their general practitioner, and then the tertiary care basis. Each of these has different sets of priorities. For most of us, when we go to medical school, or when we work in the hospital as junior doctors, this is where we are. But that's really tertiary prevention, isn't it? The problems have already started. You've got these clinics with large numbers of people with neuropathy, vascular disease. We're only preventing it from getting worse. If you really want to prevent diabetes, it's got to be prevent people from getting diabetes, or better still, prevent the general population from being exposed to risk factors. So any health policy should take those, but what about this? Primary care, between the diagnosis and coming to specialist care, or worse still, between not being diagnosed and finally reaching the diagnosis. So that group also must be included in any policy. We know from very old studies like the UK PDS that tight glycemic control is useful. We also know from the UK PDS that control of blood pressure is useful. But overall, a 1% reduction in HbA1c in old money can make a huge difference. I'll refer to this one again. There is an effect which is lasting long beyond the intensive period. So where should diabetes be treated then? The study from Morrison suggests that if you have more frequent visits in primary care, that there were better results. Now primary care doesn't mean a doctor. It could be a health educator, it could be a diabetes specialist nurse, it could be somebody who gives advice, supports, gives psychological support, etc. Now whether we can transplant this study and transform it and translate it into clinical practice in our own countries is the challenge for policy. We have the knowledge, the science has already provided it for us, but the challenge is making it happen in our own countries. Now, if you look at how good the care is, in patients with type 2 diabetes, in 2009, the results were perhaps not ideal. So again, we give the tablets and say, let's wait for it to fail. So we talked about this before, about proactive policies. Is it possible to do proactive policies when the patient has to pay to see doctors all the time, or nurses all the time, or come to hospital? So that's perhaps something where health policy might come in, the funding of healthcare. The other is regarding the patient or the person or the member of the general public as an equal partner. This is not possible unless health literacy has been improved. So many of us worked for many years in what is called the industrial age, where a lot of funding went into the top hospitals. But now, in the so-called information age of the internet, this position of the doctor is being reversed. And self-care, the role of family and friends and self-help networks is improving and becoming more important. But we still remain very important as teachers, as partners, but less important as a person who has absolute authority in the matter. So we as a profession have to adapt to this, because health policies are going to follow this model. And as a proportion of funding going into healthcare, we will not be receiving the same amount of funding that we did before. So where is the funding going? It's not that everybody will get a salary cut or that we will be unemployed, but the growth of the profession, I think, will be affected. So the potential points for improving health literacy, for instance, would be in population at large, in schools, in health systems, and of course the result would be to improve health outcome and costs. The common model adopted is these so-called building blocks for chronic disease management. It's about stratifying risk in the population. Who is more likely to get diabetes? Where should we intervene most? It's about targeting health campaigns. It's about coaching those who have the disease through education. So just like you learn to drive a car and get a license to drive the car, people with diabetes need the training. They can't just overnight acquire these skills. They need a formal course of instruction. We can't give it in every country, but some countries are making this effort. So what can we do to influence policy? Well, there are those with a political focus, which governments do. And these have been referred to by previous speakers yesterday about subsidizing healthy foods, fat taxes, sugar taxes, taxes on tobacco, so the legislation, and about policies about improving physical activity, town planning, parks, recreational spaces. Then there will be those that affect the high-risk individuals. These could be those with a preventive focus, which are not necessarily things which you and I do as doctors. This would involve screening. So whenever people talk about screening, the diabetologist is the last person to be involved in screening, because we see people once they have the diabetes. Screening can be done by the general practitioner, by the cardiologist, by the internist, by clinic staff for whatever description. So early diagnosis is something that has to be encouraged outside our specialist field. And within our specialist field, there is a clinical focus. This is about all the things that we've talked about and many speakers have added. So thinking about this, policy then will involve all three. Make it easy for the clinicians to do this properly. Make it possible for other people in healthcare to diagnose diabetes and educate people on lifestyle, and obviously educate the population. There is a cost and a benefit ratio from each of these. So if you are going to do things like, certainly in the UK, equality and equity, access to healthcare is a priority. Some areas are very poor areas, some areas are wealthy areas. The life expectancy between different areas of the UK can differ by as much as 10 years in a poor and deprived area. But to do that, you have to improve the social determinants of health. If we decide in 2010 to do this, it will take at least 15 years to see the first impact. If we looked at things like lifestyle change and have a massive campaign to improve people's lifestyle, encourage them to walk, cycle, etc., it would take about 10 years before the first results come. Politicians are elected only for 5 years. So they're not interested in this, unless they are pushed, and that's where we come in. But there is another thing that we can do. If we treat our patients optimally, we can meaningfully have an impact on mortality in 5 years. So if every GP controlled blood pressure better, if every GP controlled glycemic control better, in 5 years, with a minimum investment, you could save huge numbers of lives with a high-risk strategy. So this is the prevention pyramid then. Preventing disease in the general population would be primordial and primary prevention. Secondary prevention is preventing complications, and rehabilitation or tertiary prevention is, if they have the complications, preventing them from going on to dialysis, blindness or amputation. So it's very much still the diabetes specialist being involved. So how do we do it and where do we do it? In the grand scheme of things, the Tier 4 care is what we would develop and deliver in hospitals, in the teaching hospitals, in the district general hospitals. The Tier 3 is what is not very well done, certainly in the UK. Specialist knowledge going into the community. Because the GPs are there in the community, the specialists are in the hospital. Every time somebody comes to hospital, there is a cost involved in that transaction, even though the National Health Service is free. To the patient, there is a cost. If those skills can be transferred, there is certainly benefits and a more efficient service. And of course, Tier 2 and Tier 1 will be entirely general practice. The drive then for health policy in the UK is to drive more of diabetes care into primary care. I don't do a general type 2 diabetes clinic and haven't done one as a diabetes specialist for nearly 8 years. All those patients have been managed in primary care by GPs and practice nurses. So let's try and convert this triangle into a different domain, where you have hospital on the right and the community on the left. If you actually move care towards home, closer to home, a shift to the left, you can see that there is a saving from thousands of pounds to a few pounds investment to achieve that. So how did we achieve that? Well, this is something that came up in one of the areas that I practice. It's providing public health and primary care with a tool for proactive self-care and support management in primary care. So it involved retraining or upskilling primary care staff in taking on these responsibilities. We also developed a system which allowed them to talk to each other and talk to the specialists so that they didn't have to come to the hospital. There could be a telephone advice. So that was, if you like, a virtual ward. So at the right hand side would be the top end, the complex patients whom you want to keep out of hospital. And the left hand side would be your healthy, high risk populations. And in between would be the lifestyle education, encouragements to engage in these modifications, health mentoring and health coaching, and above all, improving health literacy. To do that, you need a team. And the team would consist of a core group of well-trained primary care staff. And you can see that the hospital team, or the hospital team working in the community, plays a smaller role, as you can see from the top right-hand corner of the screen. So that's my involvement. Everything else is general practice. Does it work only in the UK? Well, we thought we'll try and transplant this to Sri Lanka, where we developed a virtual hub with some of the local universities, allowing exchange of opinions either from the UK or from a hub in Sri Lanka. We measured the outcomes in terms of glycemic control. So what we are really doing is offering clinical decision support, because it takes years to train doctors. And we published that in the Journal of Diabetes Science and Technology to show that there was a reduction in HbA1c. And in red would be the group without decision support, and in blue would be the group with decision support. And over a period of 6 years, you can see a remarkable drop in HbA1c in a developing country using glibenclamide, metformin, insulin, and to a lesser extent sparglitazone. This was, of course, between the years of 2005 and 2012 or so. So it can be done with rudimentary UK PDS level medications. In a reverse allow effect, we actually launched this in the UK much later from the lessons learned in a developing country, and we published a follow-up as a letter again in the Journal of Diabetes Science and Technology the following year. So what I'd like to say is, while we are centrally involved in diabetes care, health policy will have to involve a lot of other people. So is diabetes too serious a matter to entrust to diabetologists alone? The fact that we've had people like Sir Michael Hurst, who's a politician, talking about it is, I think, a great thing to say we move forward. So what I'd like to say is that we are in this part, in this journey. We haven't reached the destination yet. There were some slides which I was going to show about the websites of the Sheffield City Council and the Diabetes Prevention Program, which is being conducted by voluntary organizations, including including Diabetes UK. It's a partnership, and certainly it has to be built brick by brick, but the builders should be clinicians. The diabetes specialist has a very important role in advising, and I suppose in training other staff and other parts of the health system in taking on their own work. So if I were to ask in 20 years' time, what will diabetologists be doing? They may not be treating type 2 diabetes without complications, as is happening in a large number of places. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very challenging and really inspiring presentation. And I believe for the sake of time, we should end our session thanking all the faculty of lecturers, all chairpersons and all. Thank you very much. We have a break for only 15 minutes.